Hi, everyone, and welcome to Refresh with OMS number 3 on reducing stress through meditation and mindfulness, a very, very appropriate topic for the slightly discombobulated times we're living through right now. I want to thank each and every one of you from around the world who is attending our webinar today. And I'm very happy to have you all here. Good evening, good morning, good day to everyone. I'm Alex Tversky. I am the Global Marketing Manager for OMS, and I will be walking you through just a few housekeeping tips. Some of you have probably attended previous webinar sessions, but for those guide you through the particulars of how this is going to work for the next 60 minutes before we get started and I introduce today's presenter. So first and foremost, if anyone is having any technical glitches, because obviously we're dealing with technology here, which is almost as imperfect as the world we live in today, I would strongly advise you to try to exit the webinar and re-enter using the same link that you received. And please use Google Chrome as your browser if possible, because this platform is optimized for Chrome. The session is going to run for approximately 60 minutes, and we're going to get started in about a minute or so. Presentation will last approximately 20 minutes, maybe a bit longer. Part of it will be a very, very brief guided mini meditation, which I think you'll all enjoy and perhaps get a respite, a momentary respite from the pace of our days today. And after that, we will enter into a Q&A where we'll be taking your questions. And so speaking of questions, you'll notice here is a questions tab, and that's where you should be posting your questions. And we will be collecting them and organizing them so that when we start the Q&A, we'll be able to get to as many of those questions as possible in the 40 minutes or so that we have allocated. And for those questions that we can't get to, we're going to be collecting them and having our presenter Phil start and answer them, and we'll share those answers with you as part of our weekly recap. So don't worry, we'll certainly handle as many as we can, and those that we don't handle, we'll certainly do our best to get to as part of the recap. It is being recorded, so if for whatever reason you have a glitch and can't get back in, or for those of you who aren't attending today, you'll get a link that will provide you a full recap, a full video replay of the session, so you can access it at any time. And that link is also going to be part of our weekly recap email. When you do submit questions, I would encourage you to use a feature called Upvote, which I'll explain to you in a moment. As many of you might have similar questions, if you see someone else has already asked a question that you have in mind, then you can use what you see on your screen with red arrows pointing to a little voting function next to the question that you may have that someone else has posed, so that you can vote for that question. And that way it'll make it easier for us to log multiple people who have the same question, and we'll be able to organize them accordingly. So I think I've covered all the groundwork, and without any further ado, I am very, very honored to introduce today's presenter for our Refresh with OMS number 3 on meditation and mindfulness, Phil Starton. Phil is just going to be joining us in a moment. Queuing up.
That's great. Thank you.
And there he is.
Yeah, hey.
Welcome, Phil.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now let me get my slides up and going.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There we
go.
go.
We have a patient meditative audience.
Excellent.
Waiting for your first
slide.
So
we don't need to run your meditation practices then this evening, this morning, or this afternoon, depending on where you are.
Exactly.
Good. So yeah, I'd just like to kind of extend my welcome as well to you all. So hello, good evening from a slightly rainy west of Scotland, from the west coast in Scotland. And yeah, it's amazing, real privilege to be here as part of this webinar, this global webinar. So I think, as Alex said, this is now the third in the series of OMS webinars. And I'm going to talk briefly about the fourth of the OMS steps, and specifically about stress and mindfulness and meditation. I'll try and limit it to about 20 minutes or so, and then open up for the rest of the hour for any questions. So hello to all of those that know me, and through my kind of involvement with the OMS and being on a number of retreats over the years, I've got to know quite a large number of OMSs, and it's just been wonderful. So for those that don't know me, just a few kind of words of introduction about myself. So I have primary progressive MS. I was diagnosed in 2007. I started following OMS in about 2012. And then I was fortunate to be on the first OMS retreat outside Australia and New Zealand, which was in the UK in 2013. And I say, and I've done quite a lot with OMS since then, and am now a facilitator on their retreats, along with Rachel and Sam, who you've seen in the last couple of weeks, and Veronique and Johnny, who you'll see next week and the week after. And my mindfulness journey started back in about 2011, and I have to admit, I was really skeptical at the beginning, and I had kind of a background in science and business, and it just kind of didn't make sense. But I found a course that worked, and I just loved it, and it's become a huge part of my life. So I've been trained to teach the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, and I now teach that to people with MS and to the general population. I go on kind of week-long silent retreats every year, and it's insights from some of those retreats that I kind of wanted to share with you this evening. Just give you a slightly different perspective on meditation and mindfulness. So, as I said, we'll go through sort of step 4 of the OMS program this evening. So that's mindfulness and meditation. And certainly, anecdotally, from all the retreats I think I've ever been on, it seems to be the hardest of the steps to adopt. And I certainly found it that way as well. I mean, sunlight and vitamin D was pretty straightforward, and you either get into the sunshine, which doesn't really work that often here in Scotland, but there's always tablets or sprays you can take. The diet, there's actually huge amounts of guidance out there, and I think the diet is just a sensible way of eating anyway, so it's not too bad, and we're all being told all the time that we need to do lots of exercise, so that's all good. But meditation and mindfulness just seems, yeah, maybe a little slightly harder. But I think, as Alex said, it's really appropriate to be talking about mindfulness at this point in the world. And I wasn't going to use the word discombobulation, but Alex, I like it, and I'll adopt it maybe to use that some other point. But we're in the grips of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think wherever you're sitting in the world right now, in the West, in the Americas, or in Europe, here in Europe, or in the Far East, and Australia and New Zealand, you almost certainly have been affected by this situation, and perhaps hugely impacted. And the levels of stress and anxiety have risen incredibly. And that's really not surprising, as the world, as we know it, has changed almost beyond recognition since the end of last year, the beginning of this year. And for many of us, there are real worries and stresses over our health or our family's health, over job security and income, perhaps other big concerns. And in some cases, it's just the basics of our lives, our kind of normal coping mechanisms, that just like things like going to the gym or seeing friends or whatever, they've had to stop. So this is all leading to just elevated levels of anxiety or stress worldwide. And prolonged elevated levels of anxiety and stress are bad for everyone. So regardless of whether you've got MS or not, it's bad for us all. And why is that? Well, it's partly because the mind and the body are linked. So what we think, our stress responses, our worries, our concerns, our nervousness, our emotions all affect us physiologically. And one of the ways in which the mind and the body are linked is through the fight or flight response. So how we respond to stress and feelings of being attacked is through the fight or flight response. And that was identified almost exactly 100 years ago now in the US by Dr. Walter Cannon. And this response works by activating this sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which basically prepares our body to either fight or to flee in response to a threat or in response to an attack. And it does things, our body then automatically produces a number of different stress hormones, including things like adrenaline, which increases the heart rate, pumps more blood into our muscles, so we can prepare ourselves to attack or to defend ourselves or to flee. Now that's an inflammatory response. And our body's really clever. So what it also does, it slows down and turns off unnecessary bodily functions like the digestive system, which is one of the reasons why we sometimes feel like we've got butterflies in the stomach, in the tummy, when we're under stress, is because the digestive processes are being turned off. The sexual function gets turned down. Some of the executive functioning parts of the brain get turned down, which is one of the reasons we can feel almost like we've got tunnel vision or tunnel mind when we're under extreme stress. That's the body actually turning off part of the brain. But it also, through a different axis, through the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, down regulates the immune system. So this hardwired fight-flight response is really effective in dealing with physical threats, and it's a life-saving response. But our brain really can't distinguish between, let's say, a real threat, something that really can kill us, and an imagined threat, or a worry, or a concern, or some anxiety. So right now, as we sit right in the middle of this pandemic, worrying about our family's health, or perhaps our parents' health, or our job security, or our incomes, sitting there worrying about all of this kicks off the fight or flight response. And on top of that, we've got a hardwired negativity bias. So our brains are hardwired to pay more attention to negative events than to positive events. And again, this from a survival perspective, that's great because it's more important that we learn from things that can literally kill us than for positive experiences that might be nice, but not going to bring us anything. And so these negative memories then are fixed more strongly, more easily into our minds than positive memories. There's a book by a chap called Rick Hanson called Hardwiring Happiness, which is actually an excellent book and worth a read. And he's got a lovely phrase in that. He says that the mind's like Velcro for bad experiences and Teflon for good experiences. So this just adds to the stress levels, adds to our stress reactivity, and this all impacts our health. And our mental health matters, and particularly when we have MS, as I suspect virtually everyone on this call has, it really does matter because stress exacerbates our symptoms. I certainly know it myself, and I suspect that pretty much all of us on the webinar this evening, this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are, can testify as well. It increases relapse rates, potentially even contributes to the onset of the condition itself. And I think maybe the reasons for that are pretty obvious. MS is an inflammatory, degenerative, demyelinating condition that affects your immune system. Anxiety and stress cause inflammation and dysregulate our immune system. I think what's also quite interesting is that people with MS have 3 times the rate of depression compared to the general population. And we actually have higher levels of depression than people with other chronic conditions. And scientists actually think this is an example of the mind-body connection working in the opposite direction to the flight or fight response. So rather than the mind stimulating changes in our body, actually for here, it's actually that changes in our body, so changes literally in our brain caused by the MS, is causing change in mind states. It's actually causing the depression itself. So what can we do? What we need to do is learn how to switch off the stress response and switch on the relaxation response. And we're so lucky to have George Jelinek, who 20 years ago, when he created the OMS approach, he knew this, which is why OMS step 4 is meditate for 30 minutes daily. Now, when George actually first wrote his first book, there wasn't a huge amount of research around the effectiveness of meditation. He got a lot of insights from his time with Ian Gorla and some of Ian Gorla's experiences. But certainly over the last few years, there's been an almost exponential rise in academic research into the effectiveness of meditation and its impact on reducing stress, reducing anxiety. So it's now really proven clinically that meditation can actually help. But sometimes we can find it hard to actually take the time for these longer practices. Even 10 minutes, 20 minutes can feel hard to do. We're all kind of busy people, and we've got lots to do in our day. Maybe even right now, you might be busy with work, or you might have children at home or family at home. So actually finding time to do a 20-minute practice every day could be really, really hard. But also think about why do we practice? And it's really not to try and relax for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But it's really so we can be mindful and cope better for stress for the other 23 hours and 40 minutes of the day. So we can manage our stress levels more, just better. So perhaps rather than doing, or as well as doing a longer meditation every day, then think about adding some mini meditations into your day. And you can do these at various points during the day. You can kind of almost sort of hardwire them into the day and do them at set points. Let's say when you make your first cup of tea in the morning, or when you make your coffee, or when you turn on the computer or turn off the computer, and just to do a mini meditation. You might want to do it just wherever you feel like it. You might want to do it in response to just feeling a bit down, or feeling a bit upset, or feeling just a bit stressed, and choose to do it then. And these can be really, really short. They can be just for literally a few seconds, or they can be for a few minutes. So really don't take it very much time at all. What are the different kind of mini meditations can you do? You can do what's called kind of grounding, just focusing on a particular sensation, let's say in the breath, feeling the breath, let's say in the belly, focusing on the feet, sensations in the feet, or the hands, or in the shoulders, or just whatever works for you. There's something called a breathing space, a 3-step breathing space, and that's often illustrated like by an hourglass figure. So wide at the top, and then narrow in the middle, and then wide at the base. So what that describes is a little meditation where we start by having a wide open focus, just in terms of how are you? How are you doing? What emotions are with you? What feelings are there? Just the overall state of yourself at that moment. So you do that and just think about that for, let's say, 30 seconds or a minute. And then you focus in on the breath. So narrowing your focus, just focusing on the breath. Do that for another 30 seconds or a minute or so. And then expand again to just taking the sensations throughout the entire body. And again, just do that for 30 seconds, a minute or so. So that's just a 3-step breathing space. Or you could even do things like call them micro meditations, and that's literally just being aware. So to just bring your awareness into the present moment, being aware of what's over here. So I've got picking up a cup of tea that I've got in front of me here, and just taking a moment to, let's say, feel the mug, the weight of the mug, the smell of the tea, and the taste of the tea. Just taking a few moments like that, just to be aware of whatever you're focusing on, is a little mini practice in its own right. So can I invite you now to join me in a mini meditation practice? And we can do this either sitting down or standing up. And I'll stay seated, but if you wish to stand, please do so. And I am going to invite you to close your eyes. So if your balance is as dodgy as mine is, then you may want to hold on to something to stop you falling over. And if you're sitting, then just uncrossing the legs, just putting both feet on the ground. And if it's comfortable for you, sitting slightly forward in the chair, so your back is self-supporting, and resting your hands just on the thighs or in the lap, just whichever's better for you. And then whether you're standing or sitting, just having the back upright and just softening the shoulders, letting the shoulders relax, having the head upright and tucking the chin in gently. Then just gently closing the eyes if you wish. Just moving your attention now down the body and all the way down to the feet. Just become aware of sensations in the feet. So if you're standing, feeling the weight of the whole body driving down through the feet. If you're sitting, it'll be the weight of the legs. Perhaps feeling the points of contact of the feet with the ground, the heel, both feet, ball of the foot, the edges of the feet, perhaps the toes is touching the ground. Just getting a sense of how the feet feel. Perhaps a little bit tired if it's towards the end of your day, or alive and awake, perhaps if it's earlier on in the day. So just resting the attention on the feet. And just gently bringing the attention up the legs and up to the hips and up to the belly, so to the lower abdomen. Just sensing the breath in this region of the body. So just feeling the belly expand and stretch as we breathe in and fall back, relax as you breathe out. So just letting your attention just rest on the waves of the breath in the belly. Just letting the belly and the breath breathe itself. Feeling the belly expand and then relax as you breathe out. We're not trying to control the breath in any way. We're just resting here with the breath. We're just slowing everything down for a few moments. So just taking our lives now, just one breath at a time. Just curious to the sensations of each in-breath and each out-breath. Then gently expanding your awareness to take in the whole of the body. So sensing the space that your body occupies in the room. You're sitting or standing. It's almost feeling the body feeling quite elegant, quite grounded as we sit or stand here. So it's even possible to bring a sense of kindness to the body. Just viewing the body through a lens or a filter of kindness. Just feeling your wholeness, just your completeness. Even getting a sense of the whole of this OMS community. wherever we sit in the world. Sense of connectedness right across the world. And then when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes and about stretching a little, moving the fingers, the toes, and sitting back down again, if you wish, if you've been standing. So let me come back to mindfulness now, and what mindfulness is, and share something with you that I took away from a wonderful retreat that I did here in Scotland in March this year. And the retreat was led by an extremely experienced meditator who'd been on long silent retreats on mindfulness, both in the Far East and at the Insight Meditation Center in the US. And she'd been taught by some really excellent teachers. And when we talked under the retreat about what is mindfulness, and I think this little cartoon that I know Craig has uses a lot, so you've quite possibly seen it before. I think it actually kind of sums up the normal definition of what mindfulness is pretty nicely. So you've got the human being on the left whose mind is full and full of thoughts about the things they've got to do and the worries and the people and the interactions and possibly regrets about the past. Just that whole gamut of thoughts that typically goes through our heads. So there's the kind of human doing rather than a human being. And then you've got the dog on the right, who is being mindful, just very much aware of what they can see, the sun and the trees. And that kind of view of what mindfulness is quite if you read it's quite a common view. So if you read a kind of magazine or an article about what mindfulness is and isn't, that's kind of the typical definition you'll get. It's very consistent with the definition from Jon Kabat-Zinn, his operational definition of mindfulness, which he calls paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, and with no judgment. But there's a lot more to mindfulness, and there are other ways of thinking about mindfulness. So another way of thinking about mindfulness that might be helpful for you is it's like awareness. So perhaps when you think about you're doing a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice, you're really doing an awareness practice. And even during the day, you can just bring awareness to whatever you're doing. And that in itself is just like another mini meditation. And as you practice, then your awareness changes over time. So perhaps as you practice a little bit more, reflect more, have some good teachers, your mind, your awareness deepens, it develops, it changes. So typically when we first start meditating and first start with our mindfulness practice, we really try and grow the attention muscle, just develop that base awareness, as Jon Kabat-Zinn said, just managing our attention, keeping it deliberately in the present moment and without judging. And if we do that really quite quickly and really literally over a space of a few weeks, we can find just more stability in the mind. The mind does actually feel a little bit calmer. And that's partly through because we are stimulating the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic branch of the nerves, the autonomic nervous system, and switching over into the relaxation mode. And that is a great way to start, and it achieves many of the benefits of switching off the stress response and switching on the relaxation response. But if we keep practicing, find that actually our awareness develops and we start to really have better understanding of our experiences. Might find that we reconnect with sensations in the body, start to become aware of what our belly is telling us. So where we feel tightness in the chest or in the throat, or wherever different aches, different sensations in the body, become more aware of thoughts, of our different mind states, of our different emotions. And awareness can deepen even further. When we start to become aware of just our habitual thinking, and our conditioned responses, how we always or potentially respond and react in certain ways to specific situations, to specific stimuli. We tend just to react in certain ways. We notice the things that we like and how we perhaps hold on to those, and things that we don't like, and push those away. And our minds really do start to feel a little bit more spacious at this point, and we do start to develop a slightly more resilience, just an inbuilt resilience at that point. And as the awareness deepens even further, we get to the point of actually not only just being able to notice our reactions to certain situations, but being able to let them go, to change them, and make better choices for ourselves, make better choices for other people, choose just actions, that options that are better for us. And this literally is rewiring our brain. This is changing our normal learned way of behaving, our conditioned responses, and making better choices. And this literally does say rewire the brain. And just continue on and furthering the depth of awareness. Awareness almost then just seems to sit all the time. Meditation almost becomes really quite easy, incredibly light, almost no effort whatsoever. And certainly those last two steps, when you sit and meditate, there are huge insights that can arise just naturally as part of the meditation. The meditation itself just becomes far more fluid. So I just wanted to maybe just draw that picture out for you, that meditation it's an awful lot more than just being in the present moment, intentionally and non-judging, and it can develop, it can unfold over time. And every person will have a kind of a different pathway, a different journey in terms of their awareness. But it's maybe just to draw on that a little bit. I don't know if anyone else has seen Shannon Harvey's latest film, My Year with Mindfulness. I saw it a couple of days ago, and I think she really gets it and really understands it. And if you do have an opportunity to watch it, then I'd really recommend you do so. I think it's available until the end of, it'll be tomorrow here in Europe, in the US and Americas, and the end of the day today in Australia and New Zealand. So just coming back to this, so I think through meditation, through mindfulness, we can do an awful lot to actually help look after our minds. But I think there's a question, is it enough? I mean, certainly the environment we're in right now is hugely uncertain. I think, I mean, at times it's just not clear what's going to happen next month, next week, even tomorrow. Certainly, sometimes here in the UK, it really seems just changing so much. And I guess if any of us had to think forward, what's the world going to look like, or our world going to look like in 6 months' time, it's just very, very unclear. And we're living with MS, which in itself is unpredictable. And I think that we know that we're doing everything we can do to give a positive trajectory of our MS condition through following OMS, but it is still unpredictable. So is there anything else we can do to look after our mental health? So some of the things that I've learned and do myself. So I'm just going to go through a few of those. So at night, after I got into bed and before I start falling asleep, I just do a little kind of gratitude practice. Think about just 3 things for which I've been really grateful for the day. And they can be just really, really small things, just tiny little things, perhaps just things I might have seen or heard or chat with my wife or whatever it is. And just having to think about those, fixing those in my mind, puts me in a great place to sleep. So that's just very nice to do. Then when I wake up in the morning, before I get up, I think about my intention for the day. And that's not my to-do list. That's not all the things that I should be doing. I need to tick off during the day. It's more about how do I want to behave during the day? what kind of attitude do I want to have? Perhaps, how do I want to speak? How do I want to sound? What more those kind of behaviors. And again, just helps set me up for the day, and just kind of puts me in the right frame of mind for the day ahead. And kindness, just throughout the day, just remembering to be kind. That's kind to myself and kind to others. And to me, kindness absolutely is at the heart of meditation and mindfulness. And I know how tough I am on myself sometimes. And I've noticed with a lot of people with MS, and I think particularly OMSs, we're just so tough and hard on ourselves sometimes. And I just give ourselves a break, being nice to ourselves sometimes, and it's okay. So those three little things I find just really helpful. But also then as part of, I guess, where we are in this pandemic, and how, I think we're possibly going through the biggest change in our lives, possibly a generation or two, in terms of how the world is going to alter. Just think about, I think, our values, what's important to us. I do try and do this every year or so, but it's just sit back and reflect on what's important for me in terms of my relationship, or my families, or my interests, or my work, and think about goals. Just think about goals around that, and yeah, just take a bit more control of it. One of the phrases that Trevor Wicken of the MS Gym uses, and I use the MS Gym most days, and I love it, but he talks about living your life by design and not by diagnosis, which is a phrase I really like. So I'm not quite sure at the time. I've probably exceeded my allocation of time, as I often do. Sorry about that. So let me end with another quick quote. I think the one that's particularly appropriate for the current times. Quotation from John Kabat-Zinn, that we can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf. And we can never stop the waves of change. Certainly we look at how, say, the world's changed since the beginning of the year, say with or without the MS. But we can learn how to surf, how to live with the change, how to still enjoy our lives. And I think for me, the man who's taught me and possibly taught us all how to surf particularly well is that gentleman there. So thank you, George. And thank you all for tuning in, for doing this. It's been a complete pleasure. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Put that, let me just come out and see if Alex, do I hand back to you now, Alex?
I'm back. Thank you so much, Phil, for an amazingly calming and informative presentation. I was floating between states of utter relaxation engagement. So you've gotten me into and I'm sure everyone else in attendance, into a very special place of relaxation limbo. And without further ado, I wanted to open the floor to questions. We've already collected a number, and I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the first one in a moment, but I do want to encourage anyone who has a question to please put it in the questions tab, so we can try to get to it. So, Phil, our first question tonight, or today, or this morning, or in eternal space and time, comes from Sarah, who asks, where does OMS's recommendation of 30 minutes of daily meditation come from? Why this length specifically? And a coda to that question is it better to do it in one sitting, 30 minutes all in one shot, or to perhaps break it up into two 15-minute sessions or three 10-minute sessions, for example?
Yeah. So was it Sarah or Sarah?
Sarah, I think it's Sarah.
But no, it's a really good question, and an often asked question. And it's a difficult one to. Is there an official? What's the best length of time for a meditation practice, an individual practice? Personally, I would say, so from experience, 30 minutes is a really good length to aim for. And it gives you enough time to settle and to really deepen the practice. And the quality of meditation you will get if you sit for 30 minutes is really quite different to the quality you get if you sit for, let's say, 2 50-minute sessions or 3 10-minute sessions. Just the depth, the nature of your experience, the awareness that will come through um, changes when you do the slightly longer practices. And I would say that 30 minutes, you're hitting that almost that kind of ideal point of being long enough to really become quite deep in terms of the meditation, but not too long to make it manageable in the day. So personally, I would meditate for 30 or 40 minutes. 40 minutes I quite enjoy as a period of time to sit for. Much shorter than that, I find almost just too short. But again, if you can only do a 10-minute meditation, then do a 10-minute meditation. Absolutely. But it's just to say that the quality of the meditation, of the awareness, the changes you go through, just seems to hit a sweet spot at around that 30 minutes, which is why OMS recommend that. Does that, I don't know if that answers, or there's any following questions from that?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic answer. But yeah, obviously it's a robust question. So we could probably we're skimming the surface, unfortunately. But to get us to our next question, which is from Rachel, who asks, does daily yoga practice count as meditation, or should additional meditation be done on top of that?
Can I avoid the question slightly by saying it depends. It depends on how you do the yoga practice. So if you do a more focused meditative yoga practice, then it absolutely counts. So in the same way that I did, one of the reasons I actually invited you to stand when I did my short practice as part of the talk is because you can meditate standing up or walking or doing movement yoga practice. So absolutely that can count. But again, it's how you do it. So if you do the yoga meditatively, very aware of the experience, very aware of sensations in the body as you move and stretch, aware of thoughts in the mind that might arise as you do the practice, absolutely that counts. If you're doing very dynamic or hot yoga and you're doing lots of moving around with some loud music playing and you've got a teacher in front of you or going through lots of stretches really fast, then that's more of an exercise, a cardiovascular exercise rather than a meditative yoga. So it really depends on the type of yoga. Yes, it absolutely can count. And actually, I'd encourage it. I'd encourage anyone who wants to practice meditation, yes, to try the sitting still and just focusing on the breath or sensations in the body, but also try basic yoga movement or try mindful walking. Try and go for a little walk outside or even a walk inside, just very, very slowly, carefully being aware of the sensations as you just very slowly walk or move, and thoughts might come into the mind, and just be with that. So absolutely, yes, it can count, very much so.
Phil, we have another question from Sarah, who asks, what do you think are the differences in effects on stress reduction from different practices such as guided meditation versus non-guided meditation? For example, doing formal mindfulness courses like MBSR or MBCT or MSC, or informal mindfulness exercises or silent retreats. Is there any, I know there's a lot of acronyms being introduced here, but is there any research or evidence on guided versus non-guided, formal mindfulness versus informal?
So not so much on the formal versus informal, guided versus non-guided. An awful lot of the research that has been done on mindfulness has been done on the MBSR, the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction course, and the MBCT, the Mindfulness-Based Cognitive Therapy course, just because those are very well-regarded courses, and they're also very tightly prescribed. So in terms of what you are taught week by week, how the teachers train, which I'm one, is very tightly controlled. So there's quite a lot of reproducibility in terms of how those sessions are taught, which is great from a research perspective, which is why a lot of the papers that are written and published in the academic journals keep referring to those particular MBAs, or mindfulness-based courses. So that's why that comes through that way. And it is really good to have a good teacher, someone who can teach you how to meditate, because meditation, in some ways, like anything else we might learn, a new language or a new instrument to play, a new skill. It's good to have it taught well and with some structure, which you can get either from a course like an MBSR course, or from some guided meditations, which you can just download, or from something like Insight Timer, or from a series of books. So you can teach yourself and be taught in a number of different ways. So you don't necessarily need to go on a course, but I've certainly find it very helpful to do. And now there are a lot of courses available at fairly low cost and via Zoom as well, so that are really worth doing. Maybe then coming back to the other part of the question of, does it make a difference to have a guided meditation or a non-guided meditation? And again, it's entirely what works for you. So certainly when you start meditating, I would strongly recommend you have some guidance, you have a guided meditation, and someone to listen to who will take you through the structure of meditation. It's almost impossible just to sit there in complete silence for, let's say, 20 minutes from nothing. Having that guidance initially can be really, really helpful. And there are thousands of different meditations out there. Find one that works for you, a voice that works for you, and try that. Perhaps experiment with different ones. What a lot of people do find, though, is after a period of time and using a particular meditation, you might want to move on to different ones, or try it with no sound at all. And again, there are various apps that you can, just very basic apps that you can have some bells ring at the beginning, and then let's say bells ring after 10 minutes or 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes to end the practice. It's whatever works for you, but there's no hard rule that says, actually, no, once I've been practicing with a guided meditation for, let's say, 6 months, I've got to then stop using guided meditations and go on to silence. It's just whatever works. It's just more important that you carry on with the practice. And then retreats can be, again, very good ways of certainly developing a practice, possibly getting an initial immersion in a practice as well. That's a whole other subject. I mean, I go on a silent retreat every year and just love it and get huge amounts out of it, which you can do too. Well, I'd possibly suggest starting with something like a MBSR, MBCT course first, or just doing it on your own before doing a retreat might be a good idea. So again, I hope that answers the question.
Phil, this next question from Sharon in the Netherlands might have been somewhat answered by your previous response, but just in case you have anything to add, she asks, what type of meditation should be considered quote unquote best? Metta, mantra, unguided, guided. I think you covered some of that ground in your previous response, but is there anything to add to that question?
No, and a lot of, I guess, some of those different words and sort of metta, and some of the loving kindness, the metta brahma meditation, the mindfulness ones. So some, to an extent, some of them work in quite similar ways. So a lot of sort of meditations are a mixture of concentration meditations, where you are just concentrating the mind on one certain thing. And so with a lot of mindfulness practices, that might be the breath or certain sensations of the body, or sounds, or some of your experiences. And a combination then of insight meditation, which is where more insights and awareness and understandings arise. But coupling that and those with a kindness, a meta practice as well, is to me a really powerful way of doing it. So it's actually a combination of some of those various different ones work really well together. And again, it's partly what works best for you. And I think, and I said during the talk, that kindness, that loving kindness, the metta practice, to me is at the heart of mindfulness meditation anyway. But it can be a nice practice and a good practice to do on its own and in the same way. But even that, just that sense of just awareness and just sitting with open awareness of whatever arises, being in the present moment, being with whatever thoughts or whatever sensations are here, again is a very powerful way of meditating. So again, a number of different types, try different ones, which ones work for you. And what you might even find is that at different stages of your life, different times in the year, even perhaps, different ones just work for you. Just keep doing, but they tend to all have some component of awareness and concentration associated with them.
Phil, our next question is from Nicola, who wonders if there's a best time of day to meditate. And should one do practice their meditations at the same time of day every day, or the days they meditate for better effect?
Mm-hmm. Again, a good question. Really good question. So I would say the thing that we're really trying, well, one of the things we're trying to do when we meditate, and one of our almost intentions when we sit and meditate, is to stay awake. So it's to be aware and awake. So doing it possibly at 10 o'clock at night, just before you're about to go to bed, or after a big meal, is not a good time to do it. So do it when perhaps you're feeling quite awake, quite aware. So a number of people do it in the morning, do it in the afternoon, just whatever's right. So there's no best time. It's just to say whatever works best for you, and perhaps even logistically what would be best for you. But just say not when you're feeling very sleepy. Because I do sometimes speak to people and they say, well, I kind of meditate before I go to sleep. So I lie in bed and I meditate to try and fall asleep. Then I fall asleep, and that's great, and that's clearly worked. Well, that's kind of really not what we're trying to do when we meditate. We want to try if we can to stay awake whilst we meditate, and so we're just aware of that experience as we sit and meditate. So I think maybe that would be there's almost no bad time except the times when you're really sleepy. Would be my call on that.
Or certainly for me, I shouldn't be meditating now during this webinar because I have to feed you the next question, which comes from Helen. And she asks, do you think that mindfulness practice enables us to accept rather than resist or fight our MS? What's your take on
that? Yeah, I would personally, I know I've been through quite a journey myself, and my mindfulness practice has certainly helped me go from a state of really being quite angry about the condition and the MS to very accepting of it. So I would say absolutely that changing that mind state, it's certainly helped me do that, and I think it can. But I wonder what it is. Maybe just unpacking that question a little bit, or unpacking the response a little bit. What is it that helps us get to that point of acceptance? Maybe it's just a better awareness of emotionally where we are, of what's going on, of what's important in our lives. And just seeing that actually, yeah, we have this condition, and we can live our lives wonderfully still with it. It's quite interesting. So I teach a lot of people with MS, mindfulness, and often, particularly when we do some mindful movement, there are sometimes a lot of times some tears and some real frustrations with the fact that their bodies don't work how they used to work. I also teach here in my local community, and some local communities in the west coast of Scotland. And I have some older people, some septuagenarians and even older, and they're going through similar things. Their bodies don't work as well anymore, but it's because they're getting old. And all our bodies will get to that point as we get older. So, I think in some ways we're preparing for this really, really well. And just this ability to accept what's going on. Certainly, I think my meditation and mindfulness practices have helped me with it. But it's a mind state that I'm not sure comes with just with increased awareness, perhaps naturally, and maybe you can get that from other places too. But I can see mindfulness absolutely helping.
Speaking of mindfulness and meditation, our next question from Paula concerns those two terms, because she was taught that mindfulness and meditation are different, that being mindful is being in the moment, whereas meditation is removing oneself from the moment. However, they seem to be interchangeable terms, so she's slightly confused by that, and she wonders if you have any point of view on that.
Yeah. Yes, and I did have a quote from John Kabat-Zinn that I was going to include in my slide pack, but I took out because I realized I had far too much in there. And really just the meditation, or the mindfulness meditation, is just the practice of being mindful. So all we do when we sit down and practice, let's say you call it meditation or mindfulness meditation, for 30 minutes, is we are practicing being mindful. So we are practicing being in the present moment, non-judgmentally, with our awareness of whatever is arising, awareness of our experiences, and and the questioner was absolutely right. Then we want to then apply that, if we can, to our everyday life, so we can be mindful at any point during the day. And again, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding of what mindfulness is, because again, the John Kabat-Zinn, again, the very sort of popular, almost accepted definition of mindfulness as being in the present moment, intentionally and with no judgment, is just one way of being, because there are times when we are going to need to think back and have memories, and remember past events. There are times when we're going to have to think forward and plan for the future. We can do both those things mindfully, although we're not in the present moment. We're having some thoughts of the past. We might be planning for the future, but it's more about controlling where our attention is, and that's one of the things that we're practicing as part of that mindfulness practice, is that we are in control of our attention. So rather than our attention going from thing to thing to thing, and that idea of a wandering mind, what we also practice during the mindfulness meditation practice is that controlling of the mind, putting us in control of our attentions and where it goes. So we always have a choice of where our attention is. And just because we've got a phone with lots of Facebook posts and all these things coming up, we do have a choice. We can put it down and not use it. That's part of what we practice. So question was absolutely right. There is a difference, but you can argue that actually the practice of mindfulness meditation is just so we could be then mindful in our day-to-day lives. I hope that. Sorry, very long-winded answer, but it's.
And unfortunately, there's you can't get feedback from the audience
no, it's
to
true,
acknowledge that you've answered their question. So I will be the proxy and say that was a great answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
But you would say
Phil,
that.
well, I mean that actually. I'm going to sort of conjoin two questions that are related from Sarah. And there are multiple Sarahs in the audience tonight, in case one is wondering. So firstly, do you have any favorite mindfulness or meditation resources, like such as teachers, books, courses, apps? And I'm sure you have a whole laundry list, but if you could share a few. And sort of a coda to that would be, is there any way, or do you have a way to judge the quality of a resource, like a teacher or an app or something like that? How would you judge the quality of your favorite resources?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, could we both partially park that question, Alex? Could you take that one, and maybe we can compile a list that we could send out to everyone in the audience afterwards, and I'll put together
It's a great idea.
some list of apps and books and things like that. And there's a few by kind of Joseph Goldstein, Jack Caulfield that I'm sort of looking up on the corner of my eye right now. John Kabat-Zinn's written a few good ones as well. I'll produce a list, and that way we can send it out. And send you Phil's top 10 list of books and apps and
That's a
resources.
fantastic idea.
Okay.
Or alternately, you can bring your laptop to your bookshelf right now. We can go through it. I'm totally kidding. No, I'm only
I'm
kidding.
quite tempted by that one, but yes, okay.
So our next question comes from Veronica, and she asks, what would your advice be to people who have tried different methods of meditation, but find that either it doesn't make them feel calmer, or it's uncomfortable or distressing to listen to your mind chatter on for 20 minutes?
So fortunately, it will, and so I think there's almost a fallacy, a false belief that when you meditate, your mind goes completely silent, and if it doesn't go silent, you're failing. You're not doing it right. And if there's lots of chatter, that's not working. That's not right either. Sometimes there will be lots of chatter, and particularly when you're new to it, there will be lots and lots of chatter going on. And although the kind of the invitation by the whoever's possibly reading the meditation or the teacher will be every time your mind wanders, bring it back. You might need to do that 1,000, 5,000 times during a 15-minute interval, just because your mind will keep going off and keep going off. And it might go off and you might be lost somewhere for 5 minutes before you come back again to the practice. So this is just what minds do. Minds chatter. If you practice more, you will find this actually just slow down. And particularly if you go on a more intensive retreat, it can really slow down very, very much. But minds do chatter. So perhaps just be kind. Again, cut yourself some slack. Just that's your experiences. The mind is chattering, and all you need to do when you practice is just be aware of that and bring it back. And if you're sitting there thinking, I'm really frustrated, and our bally mind won't shut up, and it's just going on and on and on, that's just your experience, and your experience is having those emotions as well, and just try and come back. So again, it's just cut yourself some slack. Just be gentle and kind as you do the practice itself, and just keep doing it. Just see how that works. See how that unfolds. So again, it's yeah, stuff. It won't. Minds will not shut up. Sometimes I joke with people on my course that there's only one time that your mind will completely shut up, and we'll be 6 foot under at that point. But it's but yeah, no, your mind will always chatter. So again.
So we're going to have two more questions, Phil, and I hope that's okay with you. We're a tiny bit over the 60-minute mark, but I hope you and our audience can stick around for a couple of more questions. So our penultimate question comes from Ruth Ellen, who asks, how does mindfulness or meditation compare with a prayer habit? Should mindfulness and meditation be done in addition to any spiritual practice of prayer practiced by individuals who have a religious tradition?
Yeah, good question. And again, there are, and from my understanding, and albeit quite limited, there are some similarities in terms of prayer and just concentrating the mind and focusing the mind and the awareness and sometimes the insight that will come through prayer as well. So I probably need to speak to that person a little bit more, but there are a lot of similarities, I think, between meditation, depending on how it's done, and some actual prayers. I mean, again, some meditation will be effectively chanting and just repeating the same phrase time and time again, which I know happens in some religious practices as well. So that there are similarities. I think maybe with the meditation and just this understanding and this opening up of awareness, which is to say something that I really got from the last retreat that I went on, and the teacher talked a lot about, and this is some of the things that Joseph Goldstein in the US at the Insight Meditation Center in Massachusetts practices. I think there are some particular insights that come from that. So to me, maybe there is something else that can be gained, but I think there are also a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities as well.
And Phil, thank you for that. It's a wonderful answer and something to reflect on. And there was some threads in the chat in the chat section about that topic as well. So it's a very timely answer. Our final question for the evening, Phil, comes from yet another Sarah. And the question pertains to, do you have any final tips or tricks or suggestions on how to make meditation a regular practice, or how to kickstart a meditation habit and get and keep going with it?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, you use my guided meditations. No, that was just a joke. Yeah, I think finding a good source of guided meditations and just keeping doing it, and then doing what works for you as part of that. So I'm quite I guess quite almost analytical in how I do things. So when I first started learning, I then bought some more, not just sort of general mindfulness books, but some slightly more almost academic mindfulness books, and looked at some of those discussions. And to me, that just worked and helped to grow my practice. So again, pursuing it from that direction. So again, seeing what works for you. So there's not one hard and fast way of doing it. And so I will put up some other posts in terms of other sources of resources. And a lot of certainly in the UK, the two big institutional universities that do a lot of research into mindfulness, and where mindfulness, some of the original MBCT courses were originally developed at Bangor University and Oxford University, have got an awful lot of online resources and some really good meditations that you can use and just guide your practice. But I think it's just work just find what works for you. Do however long works for you as well. Building up from smaller amounts to slightly longer amounts is a good way of doing it. Perhaps going straight into a 40-minute meditation or 30-minute meditation can just feel too much sometimes. So maybe just start with a couple of 10-minute ones or a 10-minute one, and try and do that most days. And if there's a week when you can't do it, that might just be sometimes. Do some of the mini and the micro meditations, just slot that in as well. So I think the other important one that is sometimes missed, that it's not just about the 30 minutes we sit there. We want to try and be mindful and to use these skills throughout the day. So when we do see and something that can come and disturb us and stress us and take us out of a normal way of being, we can deal with it and we can cope with it an awful lot better. I say that's why we do it. It's not just about that 20 minutes or 30-minute period. It's the whole day. So yeah, put some of the small ones in, find something that works for you, and just gradually expand over time.
Thank you so much, Phil. I just wanted to say, firstly, on behalf of OMS, that we are extremely grateful for your wisdom and your insights, particularly at these trying times. And we really appreciate the time you took to deliver this calming tonic to a world that's somewhat buffeted by turbulence these days. And I want to thank everyone in attendance today for their time and their attention. We really appreciate it, and we're very excited to see you at our next webinar. Just as a reminder of that, we have 2 more webinars to go in the Refresh with OMS series. You can join us next week for Refresh with OMS number 4, which is about exercising at or close to home. And that features our resident fitness expert, Veronique Gauthier-Simmons. I'm going to put up a link shortly in just 1 second that will allow you to register if you haven't already for that session. I also want to make a point. You had mentioned, Phil, the film by Shannon Harvey, the new film called My Year of Living Mindfully. So that film, we did put a link in the chat thread. That film is streaming for free until June 3rd.
Yeah.
For some of you, it may already be June 3rd, and for
Yeah.
others, it isn't yet. But Shannon has another film, her prior film called The Connection, which is a wonderful film as well. And that film will be made available to stream for free to our audience, and we will provide the link to that film, to the free streaming version of that film, in the recap that we sent out at the end of the week, which will also include Phil's top choices for meditation apps and resources, and how to judge a good one, a good instructor or a good resource. So we thank you so much for that offer, Phil. We thank everyone for their attendance and for bearing with us as we ran a little bit over. And we look forward to seeing you next week for Refresh with OMS number 4. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay calm. Right, Phil?
Indeed. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye now.
Thanks, Alex.